Good morning and welcome to another in our series of post-cabinet press briefing. It's 9:01, we're on time, on Wednesday the 1st of May. And May's Child's Month, Minister Bartlett, who joins us here, the Minister of Tourism. We also have in our midst the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Tourism, Ms. Jennifer Griffiths. Want to welcome her as well as our support staff from the Jamaica Information Service, the Public Broadcasting Corporation, and especially to you, our viewers and listeners and members of the media who are gathered here. We will not tarry too long, Minister. We will now allow the Minister to follow up on his presentation yesterday in Parliament, where he opened the sectoral debate and spoke about some very important developments in the tourism sector. I now ask Minister Bartlett to do his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Morgan, and very special welcome and good morning to members of the media who are here and those who are joining us virtually. My Permanent Secretary, Jennifer Griffiths, and the team from the Ministry of Tourism that is joining us this morning. So we begin with an overview of the performance matrix of the tourism industry for the fiscal 22-23. We had a gross earnings of $4.38 billion, a 9.6% increase over the same period the previous year. We had 2.96 million stopover arrivals, a 9.4% increase over the previous year. And we had 1.34 million cruise visitors, an increase of 9% over the previous year. The increases therefore reflect the completion of the full recovery program for the industry as of COVID-19 reflections. It will be recalled that the industry literally went to zero on the 20th of March 2020. The recovery process had been swift and strong, and we are very pleased with the performance of the partners in the industry who have all worked assiduously to enable this swift and strong recovery. But certainly it is the government and the cabinet and the overall macro and micro planning that was spearheaded, of course, by our Prime Minister that enabled this level of recovery to happen. That has put Jamaica in a very preferred position in global tourism space, where we are the only country in the region that has fully recovered and thriving. The first quarter of this year makes the point that we had 1.2 million visitors and earned $1.27 billion in the first 3 months of this year. And that is significant. But the performance as it is in terms of the earnings and arrivals is half of the story. The recovery has been stronger with the workers of the industry, because we lost just about 20% of our workers due to COVID and the recovery. But what has happened since is that we are now short of workers, not because of loss, but because of the growth. And we are back to 175,000 workers in the industry, direct and indirect, and induced we are back to 350,000. But the biggest story that is to be told is that our investors have continued to show the strongest of confidence in destination Jamaica. So much so that we didn't lose a single investor who had been on the cards or in the pipeline, if you will, before COVID. In fact, we have got new investors, and existing investors have also expanded. the scope of their investment. And so we're looking at the target of 20,000 new rooms in the next 10 to 15 years. And we are well on the track already, because this year we are opening 2,000 new rooms. So that means 1,500 new jobs. 1,500 new jobs from that 2,000 rooms. And so we are in the process now of completing the approvals for another 10,000 rooms that will in fact come on stream within the next 5 years. We have construction going on for the Unico as part of the Hard Rock arrangement in St. James. The construction is about to start for the expansion of Palladium, 900 new suites, including convention center facilities as well as golfing, but more importantly, housing for the workers of the industry. So investment for us now is going to be tied to ESG. All new investors in tourism for us will be required to subscribe to those critical elements of environmental, social, and governance arrangements, so that we are not investing now in building hotel rooms. We're investing in a tourism ecosystem that involves the workers, the community, and the hoteliers. Finally, in the overview, we are reviewing, and when I speak of reviewing, I'm cautious because I'm a market-driven person. I'm inspired by the market. And so I, from time to time, help to guide and make the market, but we don't direct the market, and we do determine what the market actually does. But the labor market arrangements for within tourism is now being reviewed, and we are looking at not legislative, but what we're looking at is operational activities that are going to guide how we develop human capital within the tourism sector, and the competencies that are going to be required, the training, certification, and classification of workers of the industry. And a team has been established that's actually working on the labor market challenge. And that we have actually begun to act out. In fact, from 2017 we started on the vision when we had the building of human capital as the fifth pillar for growth, if you recall our 5x5 strategy. So the fifth pillar was to develop a human capital, and that is what we did. We established the Jamaica Center for Tourism Innovation at that time, which was a pathway certification entity that enabled competent workers in the industry who are not qualified, who have no paper qualification, to be certified, and by their certification are able to have mobility within the organization, but more importantly, portability, so they can leave from Jamaica and work anywhere in the world because they are not only competent but certified. And that, I think, is the first key step towards the transformation of a labor market arrangement. The second was to provide training for young people who are not yet in the industry but are in high schools, in the cradle of our development. And so we team with the Ministry of Education and the American Hotel and Lodging Education Institute and the American Culinary Foundation to enable an associate degree in hotel management and customer service, so that we are able to now graduate hundreds, because we have the program in 34 schools across the island. And I think last graduation was 358 students who are in the upper end of the grades in the schools. And they now are entering into the labor market as certified personnel. That's how you change the labor market arrangement. And that's how you remove the 6 month, 3 month contract arrangement. That's how you build capacity for sustainable growth of the workers within the industry. Then we looked at how to develop the social capabilities within the industry to enable workers to feel not just a sense of place, but also to have a sense of belonging to something that is meaningful and enriching. And so we developed the program for housing for the workers. And we had our first foray in that area when we built a new community, as it were, in St. James, along with HAJ, which has 784 units. The tourism industry literally bought the lands, passed it over to HAJ. HAJ went into a JV with a private sector entity, and now they have built 784 units that are being occupied in part by workers of the industry. We also put $1 billion from the TEF into community restructuring and enhancement. And the community of Grange Pen is a big example now where 385 families have access not just to land, but some of the strongest and most satisfying community infrastructure. Every road paved, full water connection to every house, electricity and sewage. And that brownfield development is a model. And we want to do more of that in the years to come. In fact, the community in Whitehall in Negril is targeted. I think Bel Air in St. Anne we also were looking at, and a number of others around the tourism area. But what it did was to ensure that the worker wasn't leaving the palatial hotel halls and rooms and beautiful setting to go into a little hovel, but that we were looking at ensuring that they'd enjoy the fruits and benefits of tourism. But the Prime Minister came with a more revolutionary program in that regard for us, to develop now elements of social housing within the tourist area. And this year, we have earmarked $500 million to begin the program with Project Hope. And I have had discussions with the hoteliers, and they are backing it 100%. And they have agreed that they will match our contribution so that when we identify together the workers in the special need category that we're talking about, similar to those, the social housing arrangement, it's a similar kind of criteria. The worker must have access to the land, of course, whether it's family land or they have a long lease or something on it. They must be in really dire economic straits, either by virtue of their own social situation or by an induced activity like fire, a mega fire that destroys them and leave them and their children without shelter. Any acts of God or the king's enemy now? The king's enemy, yes. But disruptions that they have no control over. And so we can move in and give support there. The intention is to have 100 such houses done in this year. We, from the ministry, will cover 50, and the partners in the industry will cover the other 50. But having said that all our investment now is tied with ESG, we already have commitments from our tourism partners and investors for 3,000 houses, 3,000 units to be built for workers of the industry over the next 5 to 10 years. So the final element of the the labor market arrangements that we're trying to look at relates now to pension, the social security net, safety net that is required for the worker who has slaved over the years, done marvelously well, help us to have these statistics that I announced earlier, but are now old and should be retired. And part of the tragedy of it all is that some who should be retired can't retire because there is no social safety net. So the pension plan that we have formulated, which I've spoken about before, and which was established in 2019 formally, but never actually came into being until 21 because of the COVID. In fact, 22 to be exact, because we had to give a 2-year moratorium as a result of COVID. So we really began in 22, and to date we have 9,500 registered subscribers, and the fund is now at just about 3 billion Jamaican dollars. You will recall that the fund is augmented by $1 billion from the government of Jamaica, and it is the only one of its kind in the world. Jamaica leads the world in this regard, and we get calls and requests from countries around in the Caribbean and elsewhere for the model to be introduced in their area, because it's the only pension plan that covers every single category of workers within the tourism industry, not just the accommodation subsector, so you know, hotel workers, or the attraction subsector, so you know, the attraction. But it covers everybody, the entertainment, the transportation. It covers the little man who has his little raft, his bamboo raft on the rivers. It covers him. It covers the craft vendors and the artisans and everyone who contributes more than 30% of their output to the industry. And that is a very exciting thing. We expect that this pension fund will accrete to proportions unprecedented in the region and will provide a pool of affordable funds for capital development within not just Jamaica, but the region, and will give us what I said yesterday in Parliament, the capacity to truly convert domestic savings into investment, which is the essence of growth in your economy. And so we're excited about building out that. I want to use the opportunity here, and I didn't get a chance yesterday, but I'll do it in my closing, when I close the debate, to congratulate the board of trustees of the fund, and also the fund manager and the fund administrator, who have done marvelously well in the 2 years to bring that level of management to groundbreaking, history-making development activity in Jamaica. So finally, in my overview, I wanted to emphasize the element of innovation that we are excited about infusing in the labor market arrangements that we're talking about. The new tourism and the tourism of the future is not going to be driven by analog. We've gone now into AI. It's a new call for a technological transformation, the likeness of which the world is now contemplating and struggling with in part. But tourism is perhaps the first industry that is going to be hugely overtaken by the Internet of Things. And the service sector is very easy for this, as you know, because with data and with the ability to utilize and analyze data and the algorithms that are part of the cognitive systems, as we know, it creates all sorts of possibilities. So tourism is going to be driven heavily by virtual activities. Tourism is also going to be driven heavily by robotics. There are full hotels now in Japan and elsewhere that are fully driven by robotics. So what the new drive has to be is to educate our workers along the path of manipulating the cognitive systems, to be able, therefore, to be conversant initially with the Internet of Things, and to be able after to manipulate it to create greater output. So we have developed a program in the Tourism Enhancement Fund Agency called the Tourism Innovation Incubator. And that program is about creating a cadre of young people with fresh ideas, new ideas. There's an ad in the paper today which indicated that. And we started the program 2 years ago, and the idea was to incentivize ideas. Tourism is driven by ideas. It's always new ideas. It's not necessarily ideas that are creating inventions. It's ideas that are adding value to existing programs, projects, gadgets, equipment, processes. And the extent to which your own evaluation of your usefulness and productivity is determined. It's not by how many brand new things you do, but it's how well you do what you are doing, and how at each moment in time you're adding value and more value and more value to your own process. So we have this program. We had a first cadre of 23 young people that came in with new ideas, a new process, and then we had them go through the process of evaluation of the ideas, and then to make practical now, to convert these ideas into material things. So we see what goods they're talking about. We see the improvement that they're making. And then after you do that, how do you create the startup arrangements? How do you fund that startup to enable them now to actualize and to start to benefit from their ideas? So we want to drive that heavily, because that's how we are going to get to that next step in the tourism labor market arrangement. So today, there's the ad, and it invites young people between today to the 6th of May to come in with their new ideas. And when they have come in, and we have carried them through the boot camp, which will last a few weeks, then we do something called the Shark Tank, yes? And we have them pitch their projects to private sector individuals and so on. And then we listen, and then we determine, yes, this is a good one, that's a good one. And we then move to the next step. So with the next step is funding. And we have put $100 million from the Exim Bank, which provides now a loan pool of well over $1 billion for small and medium tourism enterprises to enable them to access this along with the program at the DBJ. So DBJ and the TEF are partnering in that regard for the startup of our small, brilliant, young people. So where tourism is going then is to create the transition from the low wage characterization that we now have, And that transition will happen by the labor market arrangements that we are trying to put in place. And this is very, very important to be understood. It's not a legislative arrangement. I want to make that very clear again. And those who believe that we must put a law for everything, it's going to be a market-driven engagement. But it's such the right thing to do, because a qualified, certified worker is a far more productive worker. And a productive worker enhances the profitability of the company in the long run. So everybody wins. And finally, I want to indicate that the image that tourism has borne over the years as being for the big man, we want to totally erase that image because it is not true. There's no industry on planet Earth that does more and offers more opportunity for the smallest of persons with the least idea. Not a genius, not a rocket scientist, but starting from a little guy with an idea, a foolish little idea to make two crabs race. And in no time they're driving a car and they're sending their children to school and building a house. I've seen it happen. And in fact, crab race is a big thing, I'm told, in Trinidad, for example. And when I was talking about it at one of our seminars in the region, somebody said, of course. But it doesn't take us a great PhD. It takes an ordinary little guy who probably has never been to school. That's what tourism does. It can take you from nothing and to make you into something. And that's the new image that we must have of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Bartlett. Really comprehensive appraisal of some of the achievements of the Ministry of Tourism over the last year. We'll now open the floor and ask questions. But before I do that, Minister, I know that some of your members of your team have arrived. If you would introduce them for us, please.
Yes, the full team, minus at least one. Where's David? David, right? At least two. Yes, Donham Delano. So, the executive director of the Tourism Product Development Company is next to our permanent secretary, Wade Mars, and beside him is the executive director. Well, sometimes more than that is his super director of tourism, Donovan White. And behind Donovan is Georgia. Georgia is the new head of the Devon House. And we didn't talk about Devon House, but Devon House is transformed. I don't know how many of you have gone to the courtyard recently, and you would see what that transformation looks like. I was there last night. So, and then the ED for the agency in the ministry that everybody thinks is the banker. And somehow they figure the tourism enhancement is for Dr. Carey Wallace. And then beside Dr. Wallace is the ED for JAMVAC. Now, JAMVAC is responsible for all these cruise development. You hear me talk about and these wonderful numbers. Cruise has really come back nicely, and I must say Joy has done marvelous work with the cruise partners across the world, especially the FCCA. And I was there at Sea Trade 2 weeks ago, and she was the mistress of the manor. Yes. So Joy Roberts from JAMVAC. And then we have our PR team, yes, and Gillian Baldeo, who I think most of you know because she's part of the media landscape. And where's Matthew? Yes? Okay, yes. And of course, my junior consultant, attorney Paige Gordon. So that's the team from us.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now, Naomi, open the floor to questions.
Thank you so much, Ministers. Minister Bartlett, yes, I believe that we've been seeing some very positive reviews on your sectoral yesterday, so congratulations to that. I do believe we have a couple of questions. The Gleaner, the CVM, and JIS, others are here. Let's start with the fair lady from the Gleaner.
Good morning, Sashana Small from the Gleaner. I have Minister Bartlett. You announced total earning of $4.8 billion US from the tourism sector yesterday. How much of that figure is retained in the Jamaican economy? And my next question is, what kinds of investments are currently being made in the town of Port Royal to develop it into the cruise ship hub that it was tutored to become?
All right. Firstly, the 4.38 billion, some 40% of that stays in Jamaica. The way that tourism costs are calculated is, firstly, you have the purchases of the product, because tourism is an import that you export. So you have to bring in the product first. So the cost of bringing the tourists here, airlines, the marketing arrangements, advertising, and then the issues of the capital expenditures that have been made to create the facilities here and the infrastructure for the tourists. So all of these are external payments that have to be made. And then the costs for the tour operators and travel agents and so on, all of those are costs that have to be made. Now, when that is over, you now have to deal with the domestic costs, starting with the taxation. And yesterday I indicated that $53 billion of direct taxes go into the consult fund from that 438, right? The 4.38. And then you have the costs of operating the transportation, the entertainment, the utilities that are required, and all of those are costs that have to be borne locally. So that's part of the 40 cents out of the dollar. So 60 cents of the dollar is away, has to be. And then it also engages with importation of goods and services that we don't have in Jamaica. Food, for example. Quite a bit of what the tourists and you and I eat, we have to import. We don't grow rice, as you know. So we have to import, and we eat a lot of rice. Rice is a staple. Then wheat, flour. And we need flour for everything, and we have to import that. Wines, we don't make wines in Jamaica. So, and so on and so forth. So all of that is part of what would not come to Jamaica, because it would have to be used to pay for imports to enable the service to happen. So why we have to push, and I didn't talk about the supply side here because I intend to delve deeply in the supply side in my next statement when I close the sectoral debate. Because tourism is divided in the two elements of economics, as you know, demand and supply. Demand is the cost that you're talking about, and I am talking about now. How to buy the tourists to come to Jamaica. That's the demand side. The supply side now is what they do, what they eat, what they drink, what we provide here at home. And that's where the wealth is. And we have to invest more on the supply side so that that 40 cents, which I tell you stays here, can become 50 or 60. Because the least we import is the more we retain. And we have a nice phrase for it. We say we want to plug the leakages by strengthening the linkages.
Thank you, Minister. On
The matter of Port Royal. Now, Port Royal is a gem in the making. And part of Port Royal's challenges is not of its own making. It's because the geophysical positioning of Port Royal on the southern side of Jamaica, where there are no itineraries, so to speak, for cruise at the moment. So we have to make Port Royal into a desired destination with distinct arrangements with boutique ships for direct entry into Port Royal. And we're working assiduously at that. Prof. Shirley and the team, and and myself and Prime Minister himself, very involved in enabling that development to happen. So Port Royal is going to be the biggest and most exciting destination in the Caribbean in short order. It's not there yet, but it's coming.
Thank you very much, Minister. Do we have another question now?
Yes, we do have more ministers, but may I just take the liberty of just asking one I see online as well, Minister, pertaining to airlift and long-stay visitors. This person is asking if you would be able to give us an update on airlift, especially more airlift coming into Kingston in particular, and to long-stay visitors from places such as Africa, Dubai. What are the updates in terms of getting into markets like those?
Right. So I indicated yesterday that Jamaica is perhaps the most connected destination in the Caribbean. With airlift out of the United States, for example, that is envious. We have good airlift out of Europe, primarily out of the UK. But we have to now be aggressive in building out the capacities for South America, and we are working on that now. The director just came back from Roots and also from the Latin America Travel Mark in Brazil. And we are now talking with LATAM, we're talking with GAL, we're talking with Avianca, and we already have COPA traveling. So South America's airlift arrangements is in hand, and we are expecting, in fact, to start with LATAM later this year. For the Middle East and elsewhere, we're going next week to the Arabian Travel Mart. We're going to meet with Emirates. We're meeting with Saudia from Saudi Arabia. And there's a new airline that is coming up out of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia that we will be talking with as well. I had conversation with the Royal Jordanian Airline, and also we're looking at Kenya Airline, and the most important airline in Africa is the Ethiopian Airline, which is the most efficient one. So we're doing those talks because you're right, the new frontier will be Africa. India, definitely on the Asian side, and therefore most of Africa and the Latin America. I'm not sure what the question was seeking to have with regards to the long stay visitors, whether it is a question about the digital nomads, as they are called now, the visitors who want to come to stay 6 months and a year or more to work, and so on.
So, Minister, the clarification is visitors who would stay longer than a week in terms of their vacation in Jamaica.
Oh, well, those we have almost every day, because the average stay of a visitor now is about 8 days. So, we have 3 weeks and full arrangements are made, as you know, to accommodate them, to make sure that the airlift, of course, as I said, is strong. For this winter, we had a 1.3 million seats across different destinations. So just to let the visitor know that the good news is almost anywhere in the world you are, you can come to Jamaica.
Thank you, Minister. Let's get back to the floor with the journalists here.
Good morning, Minister. Good morning. Ramon Gordon, CVM News. Now, earlier this month, you announced that the government will be partnering with the IDB for a new tourism strategy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, some of the key strategies, and why the team thought it important to do the collaboration now?
Right. So we had announced, if you recall, that over the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to have 20,000 new rooms. Now, the implications of 20,000 new rooms needs to be understood. What is required? What is the carrying capacity that is going to be needed? And by that I mean what kind of infrastructure support you're going to need for 20,000. What is the human capital requirement? We talk about staff and so on. How do you build capacity for that? What type of utilities? What level of increase you need in terms of your energy generation, in terms of your water, in terms of your roads, and so on and so on. So that study is to really look at all of the infrastructure and other requirements to enable Jamaica to benefit from 20,000 new rooms. The work has started, and we're doing across the island consultations. I think, PS, we have had how many consultations already? We have actually finished the consultations around the island. And the IDB team was here a couple of weeks ago. Yes. So we are well on track, but I want us to appreciate that we're not building tourism in the way that tourism started, because that was very ad hoc and it just emerged. The future has to be carefully planned and curated so that the benefits of tourism can accrue to the ordinary Jamaican citizen.
Thank you very much. Neil.
There is a follow-up. Okay. All right, let's go to Gleaner.
Hi, good morning again. I have a few questions for Minister Morgan.
I thought I was going to be lucky.
Minister, how is the government planning on responding to the recent Dan Anderson poll, which showed that most Jamaicans would vote them out of government, out of office rather, if an election were to be called now? And
I'll answer the first ones. The first thing I wish to say and the last thing I wish to say is that that wasn't discussed at Cabinet, so I have no comment on that. Could you go on to your next question, please?
Or do you accept any responsibility as Information Minister in what some described as the failure of the government to adequately communicate its achievements?
I don't understand your question.
Well, you...
the Information Minister's duty is to transfer information from Cabinet to the country, which I do here every Wednesday and which you're a part. Additionally, to manage agencies such as Jamaica Information Service from an oversight policy perspective, PBCJ, Jamaica Information Service, and so on. The assessment of my performance or lack thereof is determined by the Prime Minister's actions and decisions. So I can't comment on my own performance. I have to wait on Prime Minister, the Cabinet, and the public to comment on that.
All right. Okay. And so when will the government be bringing the enhanced security measurements to Parliament? We've been hearing soon for a while now. So is there any definitive timeline as to when that will happen?
I'm sure I can ask the Minister of National Security, who has custody of that process, to engage you after post-cab, as I was not aware that you would be asking that question, so I didn't check for an update on that issue.
Can I ask a final question?
This one is a marathon.
And you're here. We've had recent flare-up in violence, in our schools. So what I'm asking is, in what targeted ways is the government planning to address the violence that we're seeing currently in our schools?
Right, no, that's a question I can answer because it's something that has occupied the minds of the Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, and many members of the Cabinet, Minister Bartlett, would confirm. The Prime Minister did set up a violence commission, well, an anti-violence commission. He has received a draft report from the Anti-Violence Commission, and we're in the process of reviewing that. At the level of the Ministry of Education, there is work to increase the amount of school resource officers, as well as to improve the whole psychosocial interventions that take place in schools. We do know as well that the CPFSA does play a large role in engaging, especially children who are unattached or children who are disengaged from the family structure. I don't know if you remember when we opened the therapeutic center at Maxfield Park, that was not just for children in state care, but also for children who may have manifested behavioral challenges in an outpatient way. While the government has a role in assisting with dealing with behavioral challenges, you cannot deal with it effectively unless you take a whole country approach to the issue. And as such, the government continues to engage churches, continue to engage other entities outside of government to partner with us. I don't know if you remember, Minister of National Security in Parliament, as well as the Prime Minister, spoke at length about some of the social interventions that we're doing in communities to assist especially vulnerable communities and young people, to reattach them to the society and give them the assistance they need. So there's an entire suite of actions that we're taking as a government to intervene in not just schools, but also homes and communities to deal with the issue of violence and deviant behavior.
There's a question for Minister Bartlett, I suppose, piggybacking on that one asked by the reporter from The Gleaner. So, Minister Bartlett, there's a question that asks, can you give us an update on efforts and talks around ensuring that the travel bans imposed on Jamaica are lifted?
Well, to begin with, travel advices, as you know, are the purview of our international partners. And in evaluating what they regard as the state of our 3 S's, safety, security, and seamlessness, they do gradings. It is our job to ensure that at all times when the grades are done, that we are at the highest level of their evaluation. So Jamaica is working feverishly at removing those elements which are considered to foster a negative evaluation. We are working also with our diplomatic partners to enable a better understanding of the Jamaican situation. And also we are relying heavily now on Jamaica's history of strong, safe, and secure experiences. We have a 42% repeat business. That's the highest in the region. And the incidences that occur around us are limited in relation to this population that visitors that we have. So, for example, if 2 million Americans come to Jamaica every year, and there are 10 or so incidents. Yeah. But it is the duty of all council to secure the well-being of their people. So they make their comments in that regard. So we have to just continue to build out the capacity of Jamaica to secure safety at all levels. And that I am happy the market does not share the views of much of the advisories that come to us. And that's why we're able to give you the numbers that we gave a while ago.
Thank you so much, Minister, for that. I see no further questions concerning the matter. Let me just make one final check. I have one for Minister Morgan. This is what you call one of those rushing final questions then. Minister Morgan, there is then a question on, I think it's piggybacking on Ms. Small's question concerning the role of the Ministry of Information.
Well, I guess it's my lucky morning, Naomi. So the first thing is there's no Ministry of Information. And I think that there's and maybe we have not articulated effectively enough. The Minister of Information is actually the Prime Minister. And the ministry is the office of the Prime Minister. Yes. So I am a minister without portfolio. Without portfolio, meaning I do not have a ministry in the office of the Prime Minister. If you look in the budget book, you will not see a line items that says Ministry of Information. Under the office of the Prime Minister, you have the Jamaica Information Service, you have the Public Broadcasting Corporation, you have the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, and you have the Information Division, yes, which is headed by a Chief Technical Director. And also under that you have the ATI unit, and you also have the Jamaica Archives and Records Department. The role of the ministry, which is the OPM, under which the information responsibility lies, is essentially to manage those entities, manage the GIS, the PBCJ, and so on from a policy level, as well as the person who stands here, which by chance today happens to be me, at PostCab, is to transfer information from the cabinet to the public and on occasion answer questions which can bring clarity to issues that are of public concern. The ministry, which is OPM, and the department or section that speaks to information is part of a grand ecosystem in government where each ministry also has their own PR unit and their own public relations apparatus. For the system to work, it requires significant collaboration between ministers, permanent secretaries, CTD, and so forth. And the ministry, which is OPM, under which information responsibilities fall, has to collaborate with all these ministries, all these agencies, in order to assist them, and they assist us in getting information out. I don't know if that assisted the person in answering the question.
I think it would, but also, Minister, being part of the communication apparatus, if you could then just elaborate just a minute on, ensuring that we have a better ecosystem of communication and looking at a more coordinated, so to speak, government communication framework.
Well, there's a lot of work that is being done. Last year, we engaged all government communicators in a process where, similar to what the Ministry of Finance had recently with the procurement area, where we were at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we had significant discussions on how to improve government communications. Because the idea is that communication should not be for the benefit of the government. Communications is actually for the benefit of the public. And if people are unaware of what their tax dollars is doing, then it makes your job as a functionary in government pretty much irrelevant, as people will no longer have a vested interest in not just politicians, but public servants, heads of entities continuing to function, and it undermines our democratic process. So we continue to work with our agencies, our statutory bodies, our departments in government to see how we can continue to improve. One of the biggest challenges, however, that government faces, not just politicians, but government generally, is that communications has become very democratized in our period now. There are many portals through which people get information. Yes. When we were children, we had RJR and we had JVC.
That's it.
Now we have radio, TV, social media, WhatsApp, and so forth. And I think what that has done, it is forcing not just governments in Jamaica, but governments globally, as well as entities and statutory bodies and private sector companies, to really diversify how they communicate with the public. That needs to be escalated, that needs to be sped up to reach people where they consume their information.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Minister.
You're welcome,
really
Naomi.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I see no other questions, and we are, one late one from Ms. Small again. All right, no problem.
This question is also for Minister Morgan. Has Jamaica made a decision on who will replace Audrey Marks, seeing as her tenure will be up this year?
Why you keep asking me questions that I can't answer? I'm really sorry. That has not been discussed at Cabinet either. And I suspect that the most appropriate place for you to engage for that answer would be the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But that has not come up in Cabinet. I'm sorry. I think that's it.
Yes, thank you, Ministers.
Thank you very much. Minister Bartlett, thank you very much for coming, as well as to your team for participating in post-Cabinet this morning. Also, members of the media who came out, and our viewing and listening public, want to really express appreciation for you being here with us this morning. Until next week, 9 a.m. sharp, next week Wednesday, for another post-Cabinet press briefing. Thanks to the team here at OPM, as well as our support team from JIS and PBCJ. And for you, have a wonderful and safe day.